So in the world of marketing, when you're trying to market to motivated seller leads, it can be really, really tough to keep up with the marketing trends, right? Like, long time ago, you were doing direct mail campaigns, you were putting out bandit signs, and now you had to switch over, 3 or 4 years ago to doing text blasting, cold calling, voicemail drops, and all that kind of stuff. And then now it's changing even more, going in a different direction. How do I utilize Facebook ads? How do I utilize AI with this whole wave of, artificial intelligence coming to the forefront? And it can get a little overwhelming. Like even me as a marketing mind, I own a marketing agency, and that can be a really big challenge, is keeping up with what is going on and learning how to master those things, or even more importantly, determining if it actually fits my business, if it's something that I actually need to take advantage of. This is one of the things that we do talk about today on today's episode with my good friend Chris Prefontaine. He is one of the founders of Smart Real Estate Coach, a great, absolutely phenomenal coaching program for those of you who are looking to get into creative finance. Now, creative finance is something that a lot of people are starting to take a lot of interest in, and just something to add to their arsenal outside of just wholesaling or just flipping or buy and hold. Creative financing and deal structuring can be a really, really good opportunity to build some new, opportunities to come your way. So, Chris, we have him on the show here. He does have some programs if you go to smartrealestatecoach.com. Also, we did have his partner and son-in-law, Zach Beach, on an episode a couple of episodes ago. So make sure you go check that out as well. We talked about a lot of different things there. But on today's episode, we do talk about market trends and how to actually determine what marketing is going to fit your business, in the sense of like if something is changing, if there's new regulations, or if something isn't working for you at a given moment. How do you know when to change it and do something different? Adjust your budgets, adjust the amount of direct mail you're sending out, adjust the amount of the budget of your Facebook ads, and that kind of thing. We talk about that quite a bit today. The other thing is something that's, something that I have a lot of experience in is working with virtual assistants on your team to help run your marketing. Now, here's the thing. Like, I don't think that it's a smart move to only have virtual assistants working within your marketing organization or your marketing department, right? Like, I do think that you definitely need somebody in-house to at least be the puppet master, to be the marketing director that is helping guide and direct your marketing and that sort of thing, whether it is you or you hire somebody to do that, depending on the size of your team. But obviously, like, having a virtual assistant to help you with things is a really good kind of way to, leverage that world, leverage a virtual assistant to help you with tasks and duties that may not, fit you or whatever. If you are sending text blasts and it's a very systemized and processed out thing that you do, then yeah, hire a virtual assistant and plug them into those processes and those systems to get them to help you to work on those things. If the, postcard drops that you're doing are very systemized and processed out and they don't really change much, then, bring somebody in to help you with that. But we do talk about that quite a bit here. Chris has a few virtual assistants that are in his business, in his real estate business, but also in the coaching programs that he has. He gets to work with a lot of real estate teams and investors that are solopreneurs or people that maybe have a couple of, people on their team, really small teams, and he gets to see the way that they're leveraging virtual assistants, and he advises them on that as well. So it's going to be a really great episode. I'm excited to have my good friend Chris Prefontaine on. You're going to learn a lot, so make sure you take notes and enjoy. You are listening to the REI Marketing Weekly, and I am your host, Josh Culler, and welcome all you wicked smart listeners. I don't know if I nailed it. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from right outside
you did
Chicago. But I think I did a pretty good job. I've been to the Northeast a couple of times in the last year or so, but I've got my good friend Chris Prefontaine on the show today. Chris, how you doing?
I'm awesome, thank you. I'm even better now that I heard that accent.
Man, I tried my best. I practiced that at least 6 times before we got on the recording here. Well, I'm excited to have Chris on the show. So Chris and his partner, Zach, we actually had on a podcast a few episodes ago, Zach Beach. If you haven't listened to that, make sure you go check that out. But they run a coaching program for real estate investors called the Smart Real Estate Coach. Also have podcasts that my team has the pleasure of being able to manage, and lots of other content that goes out there on a daily basis. So we'll have all the links down below in the description and the show notes that you guys can connect with Chris and learn more about their coaching programs. But Chris, let's talk about some marketing. So I'm really excited to kind of dive into a handful of things here. One direction we could go is the type of marketing you guys do in your active real estate and business. The other thing is possibly talking about some types of marketing that maybe some of your students are doing, because I know you guys are pretty heavily involved in their day-to-day businesses and that sort of thing. So what do you think is a good place to start off when it comes to marketing for real estate investors?
You know what? They kind of overlap, Josh, because we keep it super basic. I mean, I'm old ham and egg style, right? So I'm real basic, but I'm coaching them all the time. So we all kind of share the same things with little variations as far as how we're marketing, quote unquote, marketing to get leads.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the basics. So you like the basics, and obviously, like, again, if you're listening right now, more than likely you are listening as a active real estate investor, looking at not just like what's the next new thing, but like what can I do in my business right now today that will work and generate leads for me. So what are you seeing from your guys' marketing that is generating leads and actually like a good investment that you think people should be making in going into Q3 soon of 2024?
Yeah, so I'll say a few. You tell me which ones you want to go back and kind of peel back the onion, okay? Because I always start with the way I had to start coming out of the crash, which was, okay, we don't have a budget, so what are we going to do to generate leads? And that would start with either phone work or very, very inexpensive mailings. And then my head goes to your specific list you're picking.
Let's talk about lists. I don't think we've had anybody talk about lists. Let's talk about lists. So obviously, like, that's one of the most key and important things when you are doing mailing. So what do you look for when it comes to building your list correctly?
Yep. There's a few that we're doing right now that are working well in the community. And it's funny, Josh, because sometimes something that works, I have one in mind, worked very well in New Hampshire for one of our students, and that was a list of multiple property owners. So they own 2 or more properties. And it worked extremely well. That it didn't work well in another area. So it's just like any other marketing, right? You got to tinker with it. So multiple property owners, because usually you get tired landlords in there, and if they're not tired today, they'll be tired in a year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. So that's a nice thing to build a list with, relationship wise. Right now, presently, wholesalers are a great lead source for us in creative. So if you're a wholesaler, then you're wholesaler, good. But you've got a bunch of leads right now. So this is kind of backwards marketing for you if you are listening to this. You have a bunch of leads you can't convert because of the way you buy. Maybe you convert X amount out of 500 leads a month. A lot of those you're tossing could be tossed to someone in our terms niche. So that's a way for us to generate, and a way to you to capitalize on stuff you're throwing away. Out-of-state owners has never been a bad list for us. It always produces out-of-state owners. If you want,
why do you think that is?
My gut, Josh, since COVID, is that caused a lot of people to think about selling, especially then when they weren't utilizing those. And then a lot of those people are getting older now. Again, with real estate, time changes stuff.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
So those come to mind.
And Chris, would you say one last thing I want to clarify with that? When you say out of state, are we talking, obviously, Rhode Island's a very small state. Are we talking like across the country out of state, or just in general out of state?
Out of state, like absentee owners, yeah. So they could be cross country, they could be next door, and they wanted a beach house, right? So
yeah.
So just out of state, or we call absentee owners. Now, I love drilling deeper because I love free and clear properties, and we can go into why, but that's a different show maybe. Free and clear properties are super lucrative for us because we can get creative with how we buy them. So you could drill deeper and say absentee out of state owner is free and clear. Now you have a really niche list. Every single person in there doesn't need to sell. Presumably they would have sold or pulled out money, right? So they're free and clear. It's a great list. Great group of people, frankly, to deal with too.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Just because it's a different type of person? They,
financially, they're not hurting. Financially, they're well off. So, like, okay, let me give a direct example. It always resonates better. We bought our office building that we had all our companies in, and I sold about half a year ago, but we bought that in 2018, and the guy was debt free. So he wasn't like, I got to do a deal now, I need cash now. He was the opposite. He's like, I don't need the cash, and I want the cash now for tax reasons and estate planning. I want to be paid over time.
Yeah.
I love dealing with them, and they get the math. They get the creativity. They love it.
For sure. Got it. So it's not like you're having to teach them like they're an elementary student and, teach them about the process and that sort of thing. They're kind of familiar with it.
You don't get the what is owner financing that's been around since, 1800. You don't get that from them.
Yeah, for sure. So when it comes to lists, obviously we got a handful of like tips and like what to look for and that sort of thing. What tools are you guys using? What tools are you using to pull lists and then segment them? Is it all in one system that you guys have, or how does that work?
Right now we're transitioning, but we have used over the years PropStream, and now Zach and I have been tinkering with Real eFlow and we're going to do some white labeling on that. It seems to be more robust, and it seems to be super user-friendly, and it has great comps on the side. So,
got it. Now, I've heard that having the right list is like the make or break of getting deals or just flushing money down the toilet. Have you guys experienced that? Is that true?
yeah, I mean, I've done plenty of mailings in my early days where we get Zippo. Now, when I do a mailing of even a few hundred, I'm looking for a deal.
Yeah.
Like that's why, let's just say 1,000 to be safe. And most people would say, well, that's tiny numbers. Not when you do a niche list. And one deal for us, as you know, ranges from like a low of 45 grand to a high of 300, 350, all 3 paydays. So is it worth it for you to do 1,000 or two? Now, this is odd because you wouldn't hear me say this when I first started. I didn't have the budget to do a mailing. I'm just saying on the side of all the phone work, why not have variety coming in the funnel so that when the market changes, you don't have to be panicking, going, oh, I'm only working this one list. You have variety and lead flow. I always like that.
Yeah. Now, when you say phone work, can you define that? Was that just calling motivated seller leads, hopping on a phone call with realtors? Like what's
Yeah, not realtors. I would rather put a pencil in my eye, but I was a realtor. I'm not shooting them down. But
you and a lot of other people.
Yeah. So no, we have virtual assistants that are trained for creative because there's virtual assistants you get from almost any real estate, but creative's a little different. So they're trained specifically by our community, and so they call first, and they'll call who? They'll call a niche list if you want them to, following up on a mailing. I have one of ours doing that now, but they mainly call expired listings for sale by owners and for rent by owners, the standard 3 lists, so that we're calling the cream in there. People say, yeah, I'm open to hearing more about that, and they don't need their money right away. We call them. Much better call for us.
Then once that call has happened from the virtual assistant, is that virtual assistant taking it all the way to the deal, or does it get passed off to your acquisitions person that you have set in place that's going to close the deal? Like, what's the next step in the process for that?
Yeah, the virtual assistant doesn't take it much past, and there are some that are really well trained. I finally got one of them after waiting for a while. They'll take it up to this person's motivation, this person's sometimes the mortgage information, and they're open to talking to you. They're not going to structure the deal. Yeah. So they're going to load that in our most of our students use REI Black Book. So they're going to load that in REI, and then we're gonna the person's going to call it. Usually the investor's going to call it at that point because they're ready to go. They're like, yeah, have them call me.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the themes that we're kind of rolling off here is marketing with either a very low budget or no budget at all.
Right.
You got, niche lists. You got now talking on the phone with motivated seller leads. What would be kind of the next stage of like somebody kind of evolving? Maybe you got a student that has closed a few deals and they have a little bit of cash to be able to spend. You don't want to, in the world of marketing, you don't want to do 25 different things all at once at the same time for the first time. Right. So what's the next stage that you think is kind of the evolution of marketing if you've got a little bit of money to spend now?
Yeah, with us, it's just throwing gas on whatever worked when you got to your first deals. You might add a VA and increase hours. You might increase your geographic area and increase hours. And for both of those, you might increase the amount of mailings you're doing, right? And the frequency. Yeah. So instead of dripping out 500 a week because that's your budget, you might go ahead and ramp that up a little bit. And again, I don't want people doing that, Josh, until they get to your point to their first payday one, we call it, right? Their first deal.
Okay. Gotcha. That from that kind of perspective, let's say like the most success, because I know you guys have worked with a lot of real estate investors over how long has Smart Real Estate Coach existed, by the way, the program?
My real estate coach started 10 years ago in 2014 with a simple, talk about marketing, with a simple email swap with a virtual assistant firm who said, hey, can you write an ebook for me? So I did. It was called Eat That Sandwich.
Yeah.
And we had investors say, yeah, I want to do that. That's how the company started.
I love it. Man, that's crazy. So 10 years, you've probably worked with a lot of people. Your most successful student that's doing marketing, what are the best practices that they're doing? Maybe it's something that they're listening to you and they're doing actively, or just something that's the fundamentals or whatever it is. Like, what are the things that they're doing from a tactical standpoint of marketing that works for them and you'd say makes them a successful student and real estate investor?
I'm probably the most boring marketing professor you've had on. Rick, the guy I mentioned in New Hampshire, Rick, because it's like you said, he's the one that started doing the multiple property list. So mail call and budget was thin. He had a 6-figure job and he was doing this on the side. Now he goes out and he pops $500,000 deals. So all he did is ramp that up. And then he added a team. So that's not marketing, but that gets him to be in the seat of more marketing because it's bringing in the cashola. So he has a virtual assistant, an executive assistant. The virtual assistant helps with the marketing, and then he just has to do more phone calls. But it's nothing tricky. And I'm not trying to water it down because it's not easy, but it is simple what we're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think that there's a lot that goes into, obviously that first point of contact, going back to the virtual assistants, making that point of contact and hopping on the phone call? Like, what kind of training do you guys put the virtual assistants through in order? Because I'm assuming, especially being in the Northeast, if you're doing deals in the Northeast, I talk about this a lot. Where like a lot of times, if you're somebody that's from, I use this example because it's a real example. I had a friend of mine that's from Pittsburgh, and he was doing TV ads in a commercial, but the actor that they hired was from Phoenix, Arizona, like born and raised there.
Yeah.
And it didn't do anything. And then I'm like, well, put yourself on there. He did that and then started getting phone calls. It's because of it's the connection, right? It's like you're that local person. So for you, like when you're training these virtual assistants, what do you put them through in order to be able to make sure that they're making a not just connection as in like the seller's picking up the phone call, but they're actually moving to that next point in the process? What are you doing to make sure that they make a connection, a personal connection, and build trust with that lead?
Couple things come to mind. One is Zach, my son-in-law and partner who you mentioned gruelingly, was training this group for creative. We had it in-house. Mm-hmm. And then that group grew to the point we said, you know what, this isn't our business. Let's have the gentleman introduce us all, take care of it. So now we outsource it all to them. All our students do too. So they were trained on creative weekly for like a couple of years. And now, since we transferred it over, we've actually had the head gentleman, David, make every VA go through our Quantum Leap system, our QLS home study program, because in there are all the scripts. Then, on a weekly basis, I encourage the investors to treat the VA like a team member. You have to, and critique their calls. Mm-hmm. So that call critiquing is the fastest way to shorten the learning curve for a student and for a VA. That's the key thing. And then, as far as being from the area, they're not all, but we make sure their phone is, right? Of course, right, they wouldn't even get answered. But we also make sure we listen to calls before picking the VA, listen to their calls before you even hire them. They'll send you 2 or 3. But most we train, and most are super, super proficient and sound 100% like they should be in that call.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, for sure. That's good. That's something I've always thought about is like when you have cold callers that are, a lot of people in the real estate investing space will have cold callers overseas and that sort of thing. And sometimes making that personal connection can be challenging and difficult, if you're talking to somebody on the phone call, because you have like one point of sense, which is just listening. Whereas, obviously if you're like us right now, we're over Zoom, so I can see your facial expressions, that's body language, that sort of thing. So obviously we can make a personal connection that way, but it's a deeper level of, kind of intimacy with that lead when you're on a phone with them. The
other thing with that though, when you say that, what comes to mind is people want to get the big deals. They want to get the $45,000 to $300,000 deals we're talking about right now, you and I, but they'll spend $6 on a VA overseas that has no training and frankly can't speak that well. It's nothing. I'm not poo-pooing them. It's just, so that's the wrong route, guys. If you go out and spend 18 to 20, and some of you may shock when I say that for a VA, listen, if you're spending $100 a week, treat it as a marketing budget. You hire them for 5 hours. It's $100 a week. You spend $5,000 the entire year, and you get a deal worth $45,000 to $300,000. I think it's good marketing dollars, but you make a decision.
That's wicked smart math, is what that is.
Simple.
Interrupting this podcast episode to tell you guys that this podcast is managed and produced by Color Media Productions. Yes, shameless plug, that's my company. However, we do this for a lot of other people as well. Most people that we work with are in the real estate investing space. So if you're listening to this podcast specifically, you probably are a real estate investor, given it's called the REI Marketing Weekly. If you're somebody that either wants to start a podcast or you have one going and it's becoming a little bit of a hassle, you're looking to transition to somebody that works a little bit better with a fluid motion in terms of you get the recordings done and then they do everything else, well, that's what we do. We do fully managed podcasts from start to finish, video, audio, show noting, the graphics, publishing, everything that goes into it. It's a full service business that we run here in a service for you as a real estate investor if you are running a podcast. Additionally, we also do social media and YouTube management as well. So all of that being on the organic side, if you are interested in learning more about working with us and just recording content with guidance and strategy set by myself personally, and then not doing anything else after that, where we're taking care of everything from start to finish, then make sure you go check us out at colormedia.com, CULLER media.com. Hit us up there and we can learn more about working together, hop on a phone call and see what we could do for you. Now back to the episode. It's simple. And like I say that all the time too, like especially if we're talking about the virtual assistant world. Obviously, like Chris, you and I both know, in the business world, having virtual assistants is a very, very common thing. Most every entrepreneur or business owner has at least one or two in their business. And me having multiple virtual assistants in my business as well, VAs, I treat them like they're a team member and they get paid like they are a US based team member. Nice. And generally, this isn't always 100% true, but it is more times than not, 8 to 9 times out of 10, you get what you pay for. So if you're paying $5 or $6 for a virtual assistant, that's what you're going to get. You're going to be hand-holding them. You're going to be, kind of like babysitting them along the way. It's frustrating. So it's going to cost you mentally. may not cost you from the bank account, but it's going to cost you from your mental position. And I think that it's a good investment to make. And the last thing I'll say for that reason is because if you have somebody on a phone call with a seller lead, again, that's the money right there. That lead is the money. And you don't want somebody cheap that is not super a high quality person on the phone with them. They're representing your brand. They are potentially being that gate to open for the money to come through to the bank account, right? Like that's extremely important. People just don't think of it that way, and it's.
No, I agree. If you do get the door open from someone not that qualified, their impression of you coming to the door really is not that great.
Of course, yeah, not sure.
Right. You mentioned, Josh, treating them like a U.S. employee, or however you said that. I couldn't agree more. We have a girl in the Philippines has been with us. I want to say 8 years. She's become part of the team, and when we instituted the profit sharing, you can't do that there. They're not the same payroll, so we just put the proration of what that would be here and did that. We also incentivize all the VAs. If we get a taken, we call it a taken, a home on a contract, they get a bonus. When we sell it, they get a bonus. So they're tied.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. One thing I want to kind of transition into, still on the same theme that we're kind of going after here, when we're talking about going from one level to the next, you have no budget in marketing, you have a low budget in marketing. We'll kind of quantify those the same way. Then you're taking that next step. You talk about pouring more fuel on the fire, do what's working, do more of that, amplify it. What kind of KPIs, I like talking about numbers a little bit here. What kind of KPIs would you advise people to be looking at in order to make that decision? Because I feel like a lot of people, like just context-wise, I feel like a lot of people will kind of try to make that leap because of feeling. Like they just kind of feel like, I think this is working, but they don't really know what numbers they're looking at to help them make that decision in that leap to pour more fuel on the fire or cut that marketing channel off completely, adjust it or whatever it is because it's not working well. What kind of KPIs are you looking at for that?
I'll tell you the KPIs that I know super, super clearly because it's been so long, as you said earlier, 10 plus years. Plus, I've been in the business 33 years. So
yeah.
So when the marketing comes in the door and now you're talking to a seller, I have those metrics. So, and I'll give you a range. You'll speak with, now keep in mind, these are leads that they have to still be selling. They had to have been called by a virtual assistant. Now you're getting them, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, but between 11 and 17 of those conversations you're getting in the door to talk to a seller. Between 17 and 25 of those conversations, you would have had what we call a taken or a home on a contract, most investors. And then around the 40 to, it depends on their skill set, but 40 to, I'll say 60 to be high leads, you'll have a sold. So, okay, so what does that translate to? About 15 leads a week for a deal a month. Go on, just translate all that.
Yeah.
That's what we have. That's what we set up the students on if their goal is that. If it's less, fine, we dial it down. If it's more, we dial it up.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that's pretty basic and extremely, I feel like when it comes to numbers and KPIs and tracking, and maybe you could say this more than I can, but I feel like real estate investors, they have these big dashboards that literally will have 55 different numbers and on 25 different spreadsheets and that sort of thing. And it's like, what are you looking at? Like, do you truly need that many numbers on your dashboard to take a look at? Obviously, there's going to be keys maybe per department, per, marketing channel that you're doing. But, I mean, you like to keep things simple. Am I correct when it comes to that?
Look, I tell people, so they do that. I call it creative avoidance. They're living on a spreadsheet. I just say, pick up this little thing that you have and make calls to those leads you just got, and then you can figure out the rest when you have your first deal. You can hire someone to do that.
Yeah, for sure. That I like that a lot. And you can have a whiz that is a spreadsheet nerd, and
go hire an engineer brain. Just go get more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's huge. I think that's a big tipping point for a lot of people. And then obviously that can cause analysis paralysis and make people get too confused about what decisions they're making, and then ultimately shut off maybe a marketing channel that was working. They just didn't know it because they were tracking the wrong numbers. We could go into a whole conversation about that. Chris, one thing I kind of want to we're running out of time here. One thing I want to really cap off with here is, what are you seeing in today's market conditions in terms of what you think is going to work moving forward? Obviously, I think cold calling is going to be going away. Text blasting is already on its way out the door.
Yeah.
Direct mail is still around, still working for a lot of people. TV ads is working for a lot of people. There's these other marketing channels, and a lot of it is stuff that we were doing 10, 15 years ago. What do you think going into maybe towards the end of the year we're going to be looking at that might work well for marketing to get leads?
Purely lead gen?
Yeah.
Okay, I have two answers. One is, no matter what the market does, it's always changing. So as it changes, we do fish in different ponds, right? So when we talked about lists earlier, I'm talking about even the expired FSBO, et cetera list, because right now the market's still uncertain. So you have a little bit of a mix, it's okay. When the market was peaking hot, is a FSBO a good lead? No, because they're just popping. The other, I don't think I would change it, Josh, to be honest with you, as the market changes, like right today, only because I don't mess with a lot of the sophisticated stuff. And again, that's why I said to you, I might be the most boring marketing person you had on so far, but I also believe in vanilla, just whatever's working, don't try to mess with it. And so those lists I mentioned earlier, quite frankly, I wouldn't change. I might go into, right now we started tinkering, and one of the students in North Carolina did this. I might start going into either tax liens or homes that were bought between like 19 and 22 with little equity. That kind of that double list. Because you are going to pick up on both those lists more of instead of the free and clear stuff, you're going to pick up more of the sub 2 type deals, and those type of deals people need your help. Totally different than a free and clear. So I'm just balancing that.
Yeah, for sure. So it's kind of opening new opportunity deal types for you that can help dictate the marketing that you're doing.
Well, yeah, look what's going on right now for trends as far as what would work now. You can go buy property now with the sub 2s that I just mentioned in the range of 2.5% to 4.5%. Come on, you're not going to see that in a long time. So why not focus there?
Yeah.
And then secondly, the pre-foreclosure, so the pre-NOD notices and the pre-foreclosure notices, those are going sky high right now. So why not fish there if you want to know exactly where to go the next 2 years or year?
Yeah, for sure. No, it's all great advice, and it's what I'm looking for. Also, I do think it's very refreshing to have people on the show that give advice that's somewhat vanilla. Not that it's bad or like, this isn't the new thing. This is what I need. Like sometimes it's exactly what you need.
Yeah.
Like you don't need the latest and greatest thing because sometimes it's just shiny object syndrome, or it's just getting distracted, and maybe you're a squirrel that's listening to this podcast and you're looking for like, what do I do next week? What do I do next week? No, we're going to stay consistent with what works. Pour more fuel on that fire. And that's really what marketing comes down to a lot of times, so.
Yeah. Can I say something about that for your listeners? But that's the shiny object thing, right? You're alluding to right now. I promise you in real estate, it's probably the most prevalent things that goes on because there are some good marketers out there, right?
Yeah.
In our space. And so you get in the shiny object syndrome, and unfortunately, it's like trying to drill a well, stop, and drilling a well, stop. You're never going to hit water because you're running around the head cut off. So yes, I do think you should put the blinders on for about 3 years and focus on what's working right now. And how do you find out what's working? Go find someone that's doing what you want to do and follow them. It's not hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with that. And as you move along, then you can add one thing every 6 months, or add that next thing the next 6 months, and add that next thing and test it. Keep giving it effort. And the last thing I'll say like that, I always advise people on when it comes to marketing, even in the social media world, and you guys have heard me say this too when working with you, is like, if you choose to do something in marketing, commit to it. Don't just half-ass it. Like, commit to it. Do it right. Do it as best you can. Because if you know it is working for other people, then it probably would work for you. You just need to get it figured out. But obviously, that doesn't mean you go do, like we've already said, 25 things all at once right now. You do open one marketing channel now. test that out. Give it as much love and tenderness as you possibly can for the next 6 months. If it works, then you know that works. Pour more fuel on the fire. And I think that's the theme we're going off of. Yeah. So, Chris, I appreciate your time, man. This has been a quick 30 minutes, but it's been a really, really good one. If obviously, like we talked about, the smart real estate coach and that sort of thing, I know you guys have some things coming up that's coming in the works. This podcast will be out sometime in the summer here this year, and I know you got an event coming up at the end of the year, towards the end of the year. Do you want to talk about any of that kind of stuff and where people can connect with you guys and learn more?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. The event is QLSlive.com, and that's in Boston this year. I lost that battle. Zach and team finally got me to have it in Boston instead of Rhode Island. It's easier to get to. So QLSlive.com. It's our staple event. We do it, flagship event. We do it every year. And then if they want just a free class, Josh, I mean, if they don't want to deal with my New England accent for 55 minutes, I have a master's class. Go at your own leisure. Nobody's going to be bugging you. Go to smartrealestatecoach.com/masters class, and you watch what we're talking about here. And hey, if it interests you, great.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, we'll have all of that linked down in the show notes below, so make sure you do go check that out. Make sure you follow them on all their socials as well, and also listen to their podcast. 450-something episodes plus deep. Tons of just amazing content there, so make sure you guys go check that out. Chris, thank you so much for stopping by and spending some time with us, and I look forward to having you back again soon, my friend.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining in and listening. If you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the show. If you're on Apple Podcast or Spotify, do me a huge favor, hit the pause button and go leave a review right now with your honest thoughts and feedback. Would love to hear from you guys. Once again, make sure you do check out all the show notes down below for all the links to be able to connect with Chris and Smart Real Estate Coach and see what all they have going on. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. See ya.